Okay, I guess 33 on my clock, so we go. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Tariq Malik. I'm the co-chair for Fort Lauderdale, Miami chapter of FANG. Thanks for joining me today. We have an excellent speaker today, and I think it's a hot button topic, AI and anything to do with AI. Neil Sohota is a CEO of ACSI Labs. He's a IBM master inventor. He's got too many things after his name, so I can't even cover them all. He's at United Nations Advisor. He's the author of a book on the AI revolution. We're very lucky to have you, Neil. Please go ahead. We'll skip all the introductions for all our participants because we have approximately 50 plus people joining us today. Right now we have, I don't know, 40 something. So 31 participants. So we'll jump right into it. And Neil, please do a brief intro for yourselves, and then we go from there. For questions and so on, I think considering the topic and so on, we're going to have too many questions. So we'll leave them till end, or if Neil allows, I'll leave it to Neil how he wants to handle it. And if there's a pause and there is something Neil will allow you to ask, we'll go with that. With that, over to Neil. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. I can't share my screen, so if you could give me permission for that. And so for everybody, I would ask you hold your questions till the end. I will save plenty of time for Q&A, but because we're doing this virtually, I think it'll just go smoother this way. So just two things I'll call out. One, I was part of the original IBM Watson team. So we did the Jeopardy challenge back in 2011. That's considered the start of this whole AI wave that we're in. And think about it, that was 13 years ago. The other thing I'll talk about is that I do a lot of work with organizations, so government, private sector, and all that, trying to figure out how we can actually leverage this technology for hopefully good and valuable purposes and try and mitigate what bad actors are going to do. So with that, let me go ahead and have the power to share my screen here. So let us get started on one of my favorite topics. So how is AI being used in accounting? Because no offense to everybody, I found that accounting is the slowest industry to actually do things. And I get that because from a kind of a liability standpoint and the need for compliance. So even slower than legal services. So I mean, no offense, but it's just the reality. I just want to set the tone that I get that. So if you're wondering why there aren't a whole bunch of things happening quite yet, that's a big reason why, but there actually is still a lot going on in the industry and there's still a lot of opportunities. So just out of curiosity, how many people are already using AI in their companies? If you can just, if you're on video, raise your hand, or you actually have a raise hand button, click on that. Let me just get a feel for how many people are already using it in their firms. All right, looks like a handful of you are. All right, fantastic. So, if you want to share in the chat what you're using AI for, I think that'd be great for everyone to hear. Hopefully we'll be covering some of that. If we don't, definitely want to hear more during the Q&A section. But if I ask this question, especially in the accounting industry, even 2.5 years ago, I might see just one hand go up. I think that's how much we're seeing a lot of change actually happen. And why? Why is it kind of now the time all these things are happening? Well, AI is not new, right? I think the term was coined in 1956. So there's been plenty of things done. You might remember, from those of you that are old enough in the 80s, a robot hand catching a ball, that kind of stuff. Why does it feel like now in the last, decade, we're starting to see more and more AI come out there? And why in the last, especially year and a half, it seems like it's an explosion everywhere? And at the heart of all this is really data. The data is the fuel for AI, and it's become the new oil. We collect so much data. Right? You think about all the videos that get posted on YouTube, all the social media posts, the digital media articles that get published. People are effectively data producing machines. As we sit here right now, on this webinar, you're all generating about 1.7 megabytes per second. Right? We already have over 79 zettabytes of data, which is more than all the books and all the libraries in the world combined. Right? There's over 15 billion mobile devices. There's over 15 billion IoT devices, with 127 being added every second. And IoT, Internet of Things, that's actually now data being captured for AI consumption, not human consumption. So we're actually generating tons of data just for machines. Got 171 million active VR users, over 58,000 AI companies in the world. But the irony is that data itself is not robust, clean, it's siloed. And so just poor data quality in the US economy costs us about $3.1 trillion on an annual basis. But this is why AI is suddenly everywhere. We suddenly have the fuel for it, the data. To give you an example of the power of this data, I'm going to shift gears for a moment and talk about the example in healthcare, and then I'll come back to accounting. But early days, after we did the Jeopardy challenge, everyone was asking us, this is amazing, this is a game changer. You've spent a hellacious amount of time and money to do this. What's next? And the honest truth is we hadn't thought that far ahead. So we had a bit of a holy war internally about what to do. And I was one of the people advocating, let's open up this, right? If it's really a game changer, let's open this up, not just like the technology stack with a bunch of APIs. Let's actually help people. Let's help domain experts, business people figure out what they can do in terms of new services, products, divisions, units, even new business ventures. So meaning not just what are the capabilities, how they can use them, but what's the financial case behind them, what's the market, all these things. And we decided to go into healthcare first because there's lots of medical data and there's a great need. And so one of the things that we did was, we started teaching Watson. We had it read, things around medical journals, clinical trial studies, basic concepts around it, working with doctors and nurses. And in 2015, there was this woman in Japan that fell ill. And, she saw her doctor of 20 plus years, quite couldn't figure it out, ran some tests, started bringing in specialists, so they started running some tests. Long story short, after about 7 months, they weren't sure what was going on with her. So one of them approached us and said, hey, could Watson help here? Like, maybe, I don't know, let's take. So Watson took all the great what the doctors did, all those tests, looked at her family medical history, personal medical history, looked at her genomics, asked the patient a few questions, and basically said, I think she has these two rare forms of leukemia. And the doctors are like, well, that's not right. Okay, Watson could be wrong. Obviously we're new to this, but Watson has the ability to explain its logic, and it's saying because of these things, that's why it thinks. There's like, no, this has never happened before. It's not possible. So because it's not happened before doesn't mean it's impossible, right? Black swan. So we said, look, we get that. We just test for these two forms of leukemia. So said, yes, they did. She tested positive for both of them. And then everyone's like, whoa, now that we know what's wrong, we're put on a treatment plan, some partial recovery here, unfortunately not full. And everyone started asking the question, like, how on earth did Watson figure this out when all these medical experts didn't realize this? And the reason is that Watson had the advantage. When it comes to AI, it remembers everything it reads, hears, sees, does, experiences. And one of the things that Watson had done is we had given it basically at that point 20 million medical treatment studies to read. So it remembers all that vast information. The average doctor has less than 5 hours a month to keep up on all these medical journals and clinical trial studies, right? And we don't have perfect memories. I calculated this out. For a human to try and read this many studies, it would take them over 300 years of nonstop reading. And this is the power of data, right? The ability to take all this information, put it together, and for a human doctor or nurse to be able to use, if they're doing something, they can tap into all that without having to be able to read all of that. And Watson can call out the relevant sections for them to validate. But that's the power of AI. Let's flip back to accounting here for a second. So 2016, I started working with H&R Block, right? They realized that 70% of U.S. tax returns are fairly standardized, so very ripe for assistance with AI. So we built an AI tool for that. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever read the tax code, so the federal, state, municipal. At least a little bit that I've read, great cure for insomnia, but perfectly made for AI. So read all the tax codes, keeps all the changes, all these types of things, and then he takes the client's information. And if it's missing things, the AI will prompt the client for, your W-2 statement or for this, ask some questions. And so we generate the tax return. The human accountant would spend about 15 minutes kind of looking it over to make sure everything looked all right, is anything missing, something weird. And it seemed to be working pretty well. But one thing we noticed was on average, the AI returns were about $246 higher. We're kind of wondering, like, why is that, right? What? And so we're kind of looking and realize because it knows literally every line of the tax code, it knows all the tax credit and tax deductions people can take. It's just like, well, this person actually qualifies for this $15 tax credit. They also qualify for this $25 refund because of these really minor things that most of us don't remember or probably missed in skimming through the tax code. And again, but like the 20 million medical treatment studies, this is the power of having an AI system for us to be able to know literally every line of the tax code and keep up with all the latest changes. So again, the power of AI. Next natural thing was to go into compliance. So you start thinking about Sarbanes-Oxley, tax auditing. The IRS actually, their master file system is so old and antiquated. We started realizing we could use AI to kind of start sifting through and look for flags or oddities, and then have a human reviewer look at those things to say, is something funny going on? On the flip side, you had a lot of, at least businesses, start realizing we can use AI to make sure that we're following the proper processes, we have the proper documentation, the things that people are doing is compliant with the different regulations, and not just at, a US, federal, state, municipal level, but international. So work like a charm. So improve, cut down costs to do some of this stuff. Let the people focus on more where the flag things are, rather than have to read through everything. Now, these are some powerful things. I don't want to say everything is golden. AI is the magic bullet solution. It's not. I want to step back for a moment and say, look, there are challenges in using AI. First and foremost, you have to have the data. You have to have enough data, clean, robust data to actually use it. It's the fuel, and if you don't have the data, you can't use AI, period. Second, we don't program AI. We don't give it the algorithms, right? We give something we call ground truth, which are rules how to make decisions. So the AI says, okay, these are the rules how to make decisions. We give it all this training data. It starts trying to put things together. It's looking for patterns to understand so it can formulate its own decisions. And that's how it wires its neural network. And that's what really creates the AI algorithms, is that neural network. That also means you have to have human teachers. So you're controlling the data, you're doing some of these things, and then of course, right, you ask it questions, you're asking it to try things. You're like, okay, AI, that's right, or that's actually wrong, this is the reason why, and this is the right answer, is the reason why, that's only partially correct. And that's how it learns. So you need those human teachers. You have to make the subject matter experts actually available. That can be a challenge sometimes. And then third is the bias, right? All data is biased, and we as human teachers, we have our own biases, and we have to be very cognizant of implicit bias. It's the unconscious bias that kind of influences how we see things and make decisions. AI will learn that from us and replicate that. So we have to take steps, active steps, try and reduce that. To give you an example of this, my work with the United Nations, they're very gung-ho on having AI robot judges. They believe it'll help reduce corruption in the system, help alleviate some of these backlogs, improve access to justice overall. So in the US court system, we have tons of data. We have decades we could actually pull from. But is that data biased? Absolutely, right? Unfortunately, if you've ever been in a courtroom, my condolences, right? We found that judges could be very subjective about things. That plays a big role. And we know, unfortunately, there are things that are like racially driven, some of these things, right or wrong. But what we found studying this, the biggest bias for judges is actually how hungry they are. The more hungry they are, the more harsh they become with their rulings and their sentencing. So if you're ever in court, try and do it after lunch. But from a teaching an AI robot standpoint, how do we strip that bias out of the data? And we start thinking about it, it's like, I mean, can we look at timestamps? If the data is timestamped, we figure out some sort of allowances, based off of that. The truth is we don't know if the judge had breakfast that day or not. We don't know if they had a big or small lunch. Everybody has a different metabolism and biochemistry. So we don't really know what their blood sugar levels are unless we hook machines into every judge and track that data for 3 or 4 years. So we know that we can never fully strip bias out of the data, but we can definitely take steps to reduce it. Now, let me shift back here because I'm probably starting to think like I do some things with AI. I hear some of these things. You just share this H&R Block story with me. Is AI going to take my job then? Right? What are people going to wind up doing? And so the truth of the matter is, in any kind of industrial revolution, we know that some jobs go away and some jobs get created, like new jobs. But the honest truth is, for most work, AI's, is it going to take your job? This is a real billboard I saw in Los Angeles. I took a picture of it. My wife was driving, so don't worry. And I looked at this and said, like, are we really capitulating? Is this what's going on? Well, for those of you who are hoping to retire, unfortunately, this is not the case. AI is, for the large part, not going to take most people's jobs. It's the person using AI who will take your job, though. That's what we're actually seeing. The nature of work is changing, and that's what happens in every industrial revolution. The tasks and activities that very standardized, mundane things are going to get automated with like AI. But that frees up our time to not just check the AI's work, but also take on more complex value add work. And that's what I see with a lot of organizations. A lot of companies that went in thinking I'm going to be able to reduce headcount actually have not. They just repurposed those workers into something else, something that creates more value for them. And this is really where the future of work is taking us. And this is really where the future of accounting, job skills, and activities are going to lie in something that we call hybrid intelligence. So it's not human versus machine, it's human using machine for the AI systems. Look, we know that AI is better at some things than we are. It can look at millions of variables very quickly, very at scale, at a low cost. It's good at math. It's better at scenario planning than we are. There's actually a lot of things that people are much better than AI systems. We're more flexible about things. We don't have rigid rules. We can handle, creative thinking. We can't teach that to machine because we don't really know how to do that. But some things require, first of a kind or a level of instinct to address. We're much better than machines at doing that. So this is really about taking our own human capabilities and augmenting them with AI abilities. And that's where the future of work is taking us, is towards this hybrid intelligence. And so for accounting, if you love auditing tax returns, you love reading the tax code, those skill sets are really not going to be in demand in the near future. It's going to be different things. It's going to be like the more complicated cases, like someone like me who travels around and you have to file taxes in different states and sometimes different countries. That more time with client engagement. For some people, it's going to be like earlier career, more rainmaking, the business development for your firm. So where are really AI systems taking us, and what does this mean for accountants? Well, a lot of like the data entry and reconciliation, that's going to be automated away to AI systems, right? We already know they can look at things, smart contracts, they can review, flag things for human review. We can do things like accounts payable, invoicing, checking if payments been made, can all be automated away through AI, right? Which is why by the end of the decade, we really feel like accountants will become data scientists, right? It'll be more about handling this complex work. So that means that as part of what we need to do as accountants to understand the capabilities AI provides, we understand how we can leverage data to a greater extent, how we can drive more insights and find some of these more value unlocking opportunities for our clients. Give you an example of this. So I worked with a VC firm, and one of their big challenges is due diligence, particularly on financial projections. So we know that a lot of them are kind of guesswork, typically beyond a year. Look at the staffing plan, market growth, customer growth, all these things to make sure everything looks all right. It's a very time consuming process for a VC fund. So the question became, could AI help us do this? The answer is yes. So I work with them to actually build a due diligence tool. So the AI will actually look at all this information, it'll look at the industry benchmark, look at comparable companies, it'll go through, if it sees things that it thinks is off, or there's some poor assumptions, it'll flag that for a human to go actually take a look at. And by doing this for the VC fund, they were actually able to reduce their time spent on due diligence by nearly 60%. So it freed up 60% of people's time. It obviously had a huge cost reduction. Now what they're doing is people, apply over there, rather than, do the traditional pre-screen all these things, they make them submit the final projections. And so they're triaging based on this and say, is the final projections look good enough? Does it meet our hurdle rate? Does it look real enough? We should even hear them, or are they not ready? Are they too early, too late for us? Are the projections not actually up to par? Let's tell them that, and we won't see them until they're far. So it's become a much better way for them to triage and build a more robust pipeline. And they've been able to reallocate those people's times to looking at more companies and seeking more opportunities. I'll tell you now that whenever I talk to private equity or VC funds, they hear about this, their first reaction is, "That's amazing. Where can I buy this?" Well, this VC fund does not license it out. It's based on their processes, their investing models, and they don't share this with anybody else because it's a huge competitive advantage for them. And that's true for a lot of AI solutions. The best AI solutions come from domain experts, from the training, understanding of technologists who just don't know some of these things. The other thing is there's some level of customization or having to create your own proprietary to actually do this. So I tell them, look, I can help you create your own version of this, but if you're hoping these guys will ever license it to you, that will not happen. So this is not like AI is not a traditional IT project. It's much different. It has different capabilities. And so this is a good example of how, technology is playing. And I'd like to share this slide. This is a timeline of essentially technology development throughout human history. I know it's busy. We've just been around for a long time. But two things I want to call out here. First is we figured out how to use controlled fire for cooking about 1 million years ago, but we only figured out agriculture at 9,000 BCE. So very long difference between the two. Second thing I want to call out is if you look at this, we've had a lot of technological innovation in the last 40 years. In fact, if you look at the last 40 years, there's been more technological innovation than the previous 400 years before that combined. And the reason I call this out is, you feel like things are happening faster and faster. There's just a floodgate. Yeah, there is. What we've learned is that this industrial revolution we're going through, the fourth one, triggered by AI, has triggered a time we're now calling hyper change, meaning we're going to experience 100 years worth of change in just 10 years. And I was talking about 2.5 years ago, if I asked accountants, are you using AI, most would say no. Different story today. And that's why I tell people, if you're thinking about just using AI now, the honest truth is you're probably 2 years behind the curve. It doesn't mean you can't overcome it. It doesn't mean there aren't leapfrog opportunities here. It's really every day you're not figuring out how to use AI or integrate it into your business, at least operationally, is a day you're, it's probably 10 days you're falling further behind, right? Hyper change. Sorry, my screen, there we go. And so where are these opportunities and why do you say leapfrog, Neil? So we are used to computers being about automation, right? Doing something faster, cheaper, or less errors. And you can use AI for this. You're only tapping into 20, 30% of the value. So AI is the third generation of computing, has whole new tools and capabilities that I get we're not familiar with, But because of so, we're not really focused on innovation, where the full potential, full value of AI really lies. And this is really about finding a new way to perform the work by changing a process or a system. I know innovation is a word that gets thrown out a lot. So let me give you an example. Let's go back in time to the 1870s. And this is the story about how the film camera was invented. And it actually started with a bet about horses. So Leland Stanford, the guy that started Stanford College, made a bet with somebody and said that when a horse gallops, when it runs, all four hoofs can be off the ground. And the person's like, no, 1 foot always needs to be on the ground. So it's on Leland to figure out proof to win the bet. And so Leland went to a scientist by the name of Edward Boudet, explained the bet. Edward thought about it. He's like, okay, I think I have an experiment to help you. So they went to a field, they set up 100 cameras. They had a person at every camera because it's the 1870s, and cameras are completely manual. That horse galloped by. The first camera went off, second later, second camera, another second, third camera, and so forth. So they effectively had a stack of 100 photos after 100 seconds. And going through it, they find one with all four hoofs off the ground. Like, yes! Leland's like, I win my bet, runs off to collect the money. But Edward's kind of just staring there and going like, huh, when I flip through these pictures, it's like I can see the horse gallop. Somehow through static images, I've created motion, hence the movie camera. Now, how is it that two people, same goal, come with such different outcomes? Right? I like to call this like the original data science problem. And the difference here is because Leland was so focused on trying to win his bet, he's looking for that one data point, that one photo that proves him correct. He found it. Because Edward has no money online here. He's not that much interest. You can look at the data as an aggregate. And what he was able to do is an aggregate, he was able to draw some unique insight from it. And that's why he invented the film camera. That's really the innovation. That's the power we have with AI is that we can look at millions of variables very quickly and have AI help us figure out these very subtle patterns we haven't seen. So how do we innovate with that, right? How do we find a new way to perform the work? I'm going to show you an example of what I consider innovation. So this is a research project I've been doing with the University of Utah. Just watch this gentleman, right? There's not much audio, so don't worry about that, but just watch this gentleman and see what he's doing.
Cool. You want to see? We'll do some reshaping? Sure.
So you notice that somehow he's controlling that robotic arm. It looks like through his mind, and that's effectively what he's doing. So we know that if you're born without a limb, a hand, or you lose it in an accident, the brain can still send signals to the phantom hand. So technologists, our first reaction is amazing. Let's drill a hole in the skull, put a chip in there to capture the brain waves, and we'll train an AI system to decode it. Well, this is not Elon Musk's Neuralink. We don't understand the brain well enough how it works to be able to teach an AI system. But working with domain experts, working with doctors, clinical researchers, what they helped us really understand was, yeah, when the brain sends that signal to the phantom hand, it triggers a process in our body. And part of that process is muscle and tendon motion. So you see that black band around his right elbow? It's an IoT sensor array. It's designed to capture the subtle muscle and tendon motions. That we can teach an AI, that we can translate into movement on the robotic arm. So we found a new way of restoring mobility. Now, this video is from about two and a half years ago, right? Today, he's shaking hands, high-fiving. He used it to drink a cup of coffee with it. He's playing tennis with it. That's how far he's come. So we think we'll be able to restore about 80% mobility, in part because there's dexterity challenges with robotics. But we found a different way of doing this. And that's what innovation is. We tapped in those new AI capabilities. And that's our leapfrog opportunities to think of these new ways of performing the work. So just think about like client engagement and risk analysis and some of these other things. How do we do that, right? People aren't always honest about things. I hate to say that, or they think they're more risk tolerant than they really are, or they don't like being judged. And so they may not give us the full truth to even do the taxes. But we've learned is we can teach AI things like psychology. So we're used to, okay, we can look at some demographic information, look at some behavioral information, draw some insight from that. We can actually teach AI psychology. And as little as 100 words, the AI can score a person across the 56 personality traits, to understand them, infer their opinions, their interests, their hobbies, even their political party affiliation. So it draws a lot more insight about the person. There's also the science of neurolinguistics. So science is like, or sorry, neurolinguistics, the words, language is like a fingerprint, and it's unique to everybody. The words we choose, the things we say, and how we say them are things we can actually teach an AI. And again, it'll draw insight from that. So these guys were kind enough to let me share this output. This is an AI system that's listening into their meeting here. So whatever they're discussing, you can see their level of interest and commitment to them, the style, how they actually learn, the things they care the most about. Dan cares, more about some of the details, while Ryan's concerned more about the facts and the value that can be created. And see how you follow up with them, how you can best work with them, right? It'll even coach you on what words to use. Like, well, to engage, Dan, you got to use the word supports, but with Ryan, you got to use the word helps. And I know, well, those are subtle things. Those words resonate much better with them. So if you want to get them more engaged, get more of their buy-in, understand more of their needs, these are things you have to do. So by teaching AI psychology and neurolinguistics, we in fact created an AI communication chart. We know how to engage each person by speaking their language, use their preferred channel, offering the right incentives so we can maximize engagement each time, every time. So yeah, therapists are now using this tool as to help with patients. You got things with spousal miscommunication, misunderstanding, parent-child, student. But from a business perspective, you're seeing more of this being used for like customer and client engagement. I mean, imagine that for no matter who your client is, through these tools, you could actually know them like a best friend does and talk to them like a best friend would. You're speaking their language, you're connecting on a much deeper level. And that's important because when you ask what clients want from an accountant, this is what was surveyed back in, I know it was 2018, but this is what they're really asking for, right? They want a trusted advisor, and they want someone that understands their business and all that kind of stuff, but they want clear communication. And as much as we like to think we're good communicators, like my wife, my soulmate, love her to death, we've been together over 20 years, we still have some of these miscommunication issues, right? But thankfully I use this AI communication coach, so at least on my side, doing a much better job with this. And that's the key thing, right? AI understands the person and helps us understand, okay, how to communicate with them. Because too often we think what's important to us is the same thing that's important to them. That's what I got to focus on. It's not. So this could be a very powerful tool for accountants to work together as colleagues, as well as engage their clients. Also think about innovation. So fraud detection, preventing money laundering, all these things are now being used with AI. AI can look at all these transactions in real time and see if something amiss and flag it. Ironically, as about a couple of months ago, took my family to a restaurant. We had a nice meal, really fantastic service. I left a nice tip because of that. And literally, as we were walking out the door, I get a text message from my credit card company. And it's like, we just saw a charge of this much at so-and-so restaurant. You normally tip, like, 22%, but this time we saw you tipped 30%. Did you really mean to do this? Right? And I did. Like I said, it was great service, but I was thinking like, wow, that is an AI system doing this. There's no human involved here. It's learned my normal behaviors because it even knew how often what my average tip was. And it said like, okay, this is a 8%, it's a pretty big gap. Let's make sure everything's on the up and up. And again, the power of AI is an innovative way to apply it for fraud prevention. And then there's also upskilling the workforce. So we think about accounting, we're talking about data scientists. How do we do this? How do we get ready for this kind of future of work that's already starting to happen? And this is where we've learned that the intersection of science and technology has been a great boon for us. Cognitive science combined with the metaverse, combined with AI, has proved very effective. Cognitive science, the science, because the truth is a lot of our education and training is still rooted in 19th century techniques. There are better ways to wire the brain for faster learning and longer retention. There are more effective ways. Everyone learns actually differently. We can do precision education. We got to understand the cognitive models to do that. AI, the metaverse, are the technologies, the tools to help implement these models. The metaverse creates a risk-free environment. So you can create a digital twin of any object, location, or person. It gives us a chance to experiment, right? Client interaction, even reading through and discussing tax code, kind of strategizing, if something's getting debated like in Congress around the tax code, how the different scenarios could play out. And the AI bring the real world impacts and influence. So what we can really do is the AI will do scenario planning. So any action decision we take in the space, it'll show us not just the direct outcome, but the ripple effect over time. So we can understand the indirect things that will occur from what we do. And you can't memorize your way through this because as you get better and upskill, it dynamically keeps changing things. You keep getting better. And through this, what we've learned is we can basically take your best accountants, clone their expertise. So they understand the tax code or they're the way they handle clients and teach that to the rest of the firm. So we can actually lift everybody up to that what the level that best person is, and basically establish a new average. So that's the power we have through cognitive science, AI, and the metaverse to uplift accountants and get them ready for the future work. So I know we talked a lot about different things. One last thing I want to cover is just where AI solutions are going to originate in your organization, because everyone's like, I know I should be using AI. Just what is it? Why isn't anybody helping me out? Right? Well, the truth is there's no box really to buy. There are some tools out there that might have to be customized, like I said, but most organizations, they're looking at their IT folks, right? So I'll just, I won't ask you to answer, but think about this. Would you let Elon Musk perform open heart surgery on you? Would you let Mark Zuckerberg do your taxes? Right? Most of you are shaking your heads. It's like, no, and they're not trained for that, right? But then why is it everyone's looking to the big tech companies to build solutions for you as accountants? They don't understand your pain points. You put a bunch of smart technologists together, they're thinking about building flying cars, not how we can, figure out how to better decode the tax code or figure out where tax law might be going in the future. They just don't know that. The best solutions come from domain experts. You need a AI tool to help you with tax preparation, risk management planning, whatever it might be. You need to be in the driver's seat to help create that, or at least train the AIs on that. So at the end of the day, I know a lot of stuff is working, right? But we all know that things are rapidly changing over time, particularly at a time of hyper change. So keeping the lights on is going to keep you safe. And this is not about trying to fix something that's necessarily broken. Sometimes it's about kind of starting over, right? The innovation and finding a new way of actually doing the work. So with that, I did want to promise time for questions. I will hold this slide up for just a few minutes before I stop the screen share. If we don't have time for your question or you want to ask something privately, my contact information is here. There's a contact form on my website. I always get people asking, like, where can I learn more? There's a great LinkedIn newsletter called Disrupting the Box, my social handles. I would also ask that just if you could just scan that QR code and take a quick 20 seconds, just leave me some feedback. I'm always looking to try and improve my talks so I can create more value for you guys. So I'll leave this up for just a few more seconds if you want to take a picture. But with that, what we'll do is we'll open up for Q&A. I'll look to Joyce and Tariq if you have any special ways you want to doing that. If you want to call people, they can unmute. If you want to tap something to the chat room, feel free to do that. But I want to make sure we have plenty of time to address your questions, any comments or ideas you may have. So, oh boy, give me a second here. I'm sitting in the sun and my board is super hot now.
Well, thank you so much, Neil. It was wonderful. I don't think we have many questions in our chat. It's more of introductions and so on, but if anybody has some questions, please raise your hand and be happy to forward it to, or Neil will pick it up and answer it. That was amazing, Neil. Thank you. Appreciate
Okay, I
it.
appreciate it. So please don't be shy. This is a safe space.
I'll ask a question, Neil, quickly. How long do you think, just like the email revolution and so on, took a while for everybody to pick up, and some of the people in my age group said, I don't need to learn it. I'll pass without learning it, only to find out later on that everything went email wise and internet and so on. What's your very broad 30,000 feet level view? How long before it's fully deployed? 5, 10, 15 years, or 5 months?
Honestly, I think in 2, 3 years, most operations will have changed. That's just how quickly it's happening, right?
Right.
If you look back 10 years, we didn't have rideshare, we didn't have social media marketers, we didn't have Bitcoin and all that. But you look 18 months ago, people didn't have ChatGPT.
Right.
That's how fast things are moving.
And I know it depends on each industry as well. I was talking to a lawyer friend of mine. He's paying $300 right now. He says it saves him 90% of the time to do any research on related cases and matters. He literally just puts it in, picks up the top 10 cases relevant to him, and then possibly reads it or gets a summary even from AI to read it for him. So he says, like, that would have taken me a whole day to go through. His billing hasn't gone down, of course, but his output has increased.
Yeah, that's what I tell a lot of people is that you can actually increase your book of business. That's the real thing. I know we get hung up on the billable hour, but would you like to be able to support a larger client set and do more value add work, right?
Right, right.
So Gary, hold on a second. I see a couple of things just in the chat. So David's asking how to choose an AP provider with AI. I'm not sure if you mean API or not. So I always tell people that obviously first start with the problem, what you're trying to do solution wise, then talk to technologists to see if the capabilities are there. But you have to be able to do some due diligence. I know that's really hard these days because there's a lot of, I hate to say it, scammy companies out there claiming that they're AI experts or they have this amazing AI tool. And often they don't have the knowledge, expertise, or their tool doesn't even use AI, sorry, where you need to find, trusted advisors that know the space to help you actually vet that out. So that's actually one of the two biggest asks people always ask for me is, can you help me figure out what I should be doing with AI? And then the second is always, can you help me vet vendors to figure out who I should actually be partnering with? So if you feel like you can't build your skills up, there's a lot of great courses out there. You don't have to learn how AI is built, but how to use it. But if you feel like you need a good technologist, look for people that actually know how to vet that out. They have the right credentials. They've actually built stuff that you can see notable people. Like that's why I talk about like H&R Block, notable people that actually have a track record. So do your homework on them. Otherwise, I've seen a lot of people unfortunately get scammed. All right, Gary.
Yeah, I was just wanted to make a comment. You know, I'm a tax professional and deal with a number of different bigger accounting firms. Everybody from EY, PwC, Grant Thornton. Um, they're all working on AI processes, and it's not just on the audit side. It's also on the tax side. It's on the consulting side. Um, if just as a comment, you know, if we don't keep up with this, we will become obsolete very, very quickly. So you definitely have to pay attention to it. From the tax side, it's kind of interesting because, you know, a lot of the research now, there's just so much AI that's even from the big firms, you know, the RIAs of the world, the Thomson Reuters, you know, those people, they're using a ton of AI in their processes. And one of the key things that we're seeing also in the tax world is our accounting brethren are using AI to close the books, to set up accruals, to do everything. So, you know, if we're not there with them, we're going to just fall so far behind that you know, so just my 2 cents worth.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, Gary. I think it's tough for some people to maybe believe because we don't see it. I get that. But, November, E&Y actually hosted a summit in Phoenix around just accounting, and they asked me to come out and give the opening keynote. But part of the summit was they were showing all these tools that not just E&Y has, all these things, and a lot of people just kind of wondering, it's like, wait, they've been using that for 2 years, 3 years. Wait, what's going on here? I had like the people just like I had no idea. And I remember the evening reception, a lot of people were like, am I behind? Like, how far am I behind? I'm like, the honest truth is you're a couple of years behind already. And then
Yeah.
it's scrambling, they're trying to play catch up. Well, how do I do what E&Y did? And it's like, let's not necessarily have to do exactly what E&Y did. You have to figure out what are the pain points you want to solve for your firm, and then what are the tools out there that you can leverage to implement that vision. So it's not rocket science, but I think a lot of people just like, I need to use AI, and they think, okay, what's the AI thing? How do I jam it into my processes or my problem, right? Always start with a problem first. I can't emphasize that enough. So, hold on a second. I see your hand up. I saw it thing in the chat. I just want to address that. So, Gilhar is asking how much leeway, scope an accountant can find getting his hands into AI as a SME. It just depends on who's working. Like, you'll find a lot of technologists are trying to do things. If you go to AngelList, for example, they're looking for accounting SMEs for their whatever AI tool they're trying to build. They just don't understand the problem. So there are opportunities there. But if you work for a firm, small or big, you need to be one of the drivers pushing to show that, hey, it's the training, it's this expertise that's going to create something. The most successful tools that are out there actually created by accountants or financial services people, not technologists. All right, Jake
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Neil, I think you mentioned something about classes. Are there any classes or resources that you could recommend that would kind of be helpful in learning how to identify uses from a user side and getting into it a little bit more from the user side, not deep into the technology, but learning enough so that you kind of know where to go.
Yeah, there are some. Unfortunately, a lot of the education is more technically oriented because it's technologists. Andrew Go, and that's spelled his last name is NG, but it's pronounced Go. He has some pretty good YouTube videos. They're obviously free. He talks about like how you formulate a business use, how you take a problem, try and apply AI to that, and how you build a kind of a business case, ROI, IRR around that. It's very high level, but there's some good initial steps. I mean, aside from my book, which I probably should mention, on the revolution, which provides some tools on how to actually do that, a framework. There's actually not much out there. A lot of people kind of rely on experts like myself to try and figure that out, because the problems that we've learned from an organization are just, they tend to be very specific to that organization just because of the way their processes and their approach, the culture, that they need help just even kind of like saying like, hey, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. What can I actually do? And part of that needs to be a look at like, do you even have the data to pursue something or not? But I would definitely start with Andrew Go on YouTube. Coursera and Treehouse have some good like overview and help you understand the capabilities so you can apply that to a problem. And they have some free stuff. I can't remember the name of the courses are, but I would definitely also check out Coursera and Treehouse. And of course, just always, LinkedIn newsletters like Disrupting the Box, that kind of stuff, always good because they're talking about various industries and how they were able to figure something out.
Very good. Thank you.
My pleasure. Hold on a second, Michael. I see some stuff that was put in here. So Rodney was asking, there continues to be announcements that AI needs to be controlled relative to its uses. The big tech firms keep underscoring this. Have you seen any tangible efforts towards generating how AI should be regulated? Yes, that's a good chunk of my work with the United Nations. I'm very big on, we need to regulate AI. I've been saying that for 15 years now. So you guys know, I was actually last month, I gave the opening keynote at GSR, the Global Symposium for Regulators. So there's a lot of talk, right? There's a lot more action, but regulators realize now that we're not good at thinking about other uses or misuses, right? When businesses want something, they're thinking about an outcome. Technologists build that outcome. They don't look at how the technology, the tool could be used in other ways. And so the regulators realize that they need to change their approach to this. They need to bring in industry folks, technology folks, academia, NGOs, nonprofits, so you can actually think about other ways this stuff could be used. They've also learned, thankfully, that bad actors will always do bad things, but good actors need a nudge. So regulation is not just about protecting from harm, but creating, incentives, a mindset, a culture, so people will also think about good things to actually do with it. And then real quick here, Kurt, I think that's an introduction. Sorry. All right, Michael, you have a question, comment?
Real quick, say as just an individual private citizen, that you've got, say, a couple dozen commercial properties, and obviously you can access the data through Excel. What's a quick way to use something in AI to let them have at it and come up with something like maybe that dashboard that you were showing?
So some Gen AI tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity AI can actually take an Excel spreadsheet. If you ask it to do something, it can actually produce those results for you. In fact, you can even update your Excel spreadsheet and do Monte Carlo simulations. So that's kind of a easy entry point. There are more complex things actually going on. So I was talking about cognitive science, AI, the metaverse. There are now actually real estate developers and property managers that are actually taking that. And so like if you have like a raw piece of land, they're actually exploring through AI and say like, how can this land be developed? And so the AI is not just looking at some different options, it's thinking about the zoning laws, how the area around it might grow. So socioeconomic factors over 20, 30 years. And it's coming up with literally a million different scenarios, running Monte Carlo simulations on all of them, basically taking the top 7 to 12 of those and sharing it with the folks so then the people can actually review them and see which one of these might be the best option, how to develop the raw land. The same thing with existing properties and like how can you renovate or refurbish that based on trends. So low entry point, work with like ChatGPT. It's great at some of that stuff. Long-term, more complex things, there are tools out there to help you like even figure out best use of land, tax liabilities on that or tax benefits from that, take advantage of some of these things. So there's everything I can say, there's a lot that's possible. Start small, right? Start with something that doesn't require a whole lot of data and show some quick wins, show some early value and build from there. A bit of a
Yeah,
long-winded answer, I apologize.
Yeah.
But I hope it helps.
Well, if like Facebook has that large language model, I guess they just had a press release the last few days about that. I mean, is that something that's accessible to an individual? It says that it's free.
Yeah, I would be cautious from anything from Facebook. They're late to the party, and just reference for everybody that there's always concern about, are they taking my data? Are they taking my models? Anything that's free, you're basically giving away your data and your models to that company. Right? You can't retain it. If you read the terms and conditions, they even tell you that's their property. If you're paying for something, like if a paid version of ChatGPT, it's yours. You get your own private instance. They don't take your data, don't take your models, they don't share it with anybody else. Other people's stuff you can't see or use. So I'm a little leery about Facebook. Like I said, they're late to the game, and they actually own your stuff. And
Okay.
that's true if you post anything on Facebook, Instagram, all that, threads. It actually tells you anything you post is their property. So you post a picture of your child, that's their picture, not your picture anymore. Just keep that in mind.
And economically, for an individual, is there an entry level price point into AI?
A lot of these things they're charging $20 a month, which at least in the US is not bad. But if you have a Microsoft 360 subscription, it includes Copilot. So Copilot is Microsoft's Gen AI tool built off ChatGPT. That's if you have Microsoft 360, that becomes free to use. It's not like fully functional, but it'll probably get, for most of you, it'll probably do 80% of the stuff you want. And if you need more, there is a paid version of, or advanced version of Copilot they call Autopilot.
Thank you.
Neil, I was about to ask you about Copilot. What's your view on that? Is that matured or is that still in transition, experimented upon, and so on?
It depends on what you're trying to do with it. So Copilot is actually a lot more mature than ChatGPT. It has much fresher data. Microsoft's done a lot of model training, so it can do more things than ChatGPT can. You got to remember that if AI hasn't been trained on something, it can't do it for you. So no matter how good your prompts are, it just doesn't have the models. So I hate to say from an accounting standpoint, I don't, beyond like the more standard traditional stuff that people are familiar with, I don't think there's been more advanced work done on that. There's probably an opportunity if you want to work with Microsoft to do that. Because anything that'll help them obviously sell more things they'll do, and they'll help provide resources and stuff. But that's one of those leapfrog opportunities for accounting firms.
Hey Neil, quick question. This is Umar. Some basic question, like how do you deal with this hallucination with this Gen AI type of models like 4.0? And the other is I found like, and I think it's pretty well known, it still makes some mathematical errors in calculation. So how do we, what should you be aware of when you're looking at this?
There's three things here with hallucinations, right? To safeguard against them. First and foremost, whatever AI gives you, whatever Gen AI in particular gives you, is always a draft, right? We're not removing humans from the equation. This is hybrid intelligence. Whatever you get, you still need to review it. Look for errors and correct them. Look if it's missed stuff. If it's got extraneous stuff, put the final polish and all that as well onto it as the final output. The second thing is, whatever you're asking the AI, you have to make sure it's actually been trained to do that. Right? Because if it can't, the thing is, a lot of times it's not going to tell you that, oh, I don't know how to do that. It doesn't understand that. It'll try and just make something up to the best of its abilities to, to fulfill your request. So it can be tough if you're doing something very specialized. ChatGPT, Microsoft, they have lists available. I know you have to sort through them, but they'll tell you if you're able to do this. And in some things like ChatGPT, you can even ask it like, have you been trained to do this? And it'll tell you yes or no.
Okay,
So you can actually
that's a
ask.
good.
The third thing is you got to be good at prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is not a job, it's a skill set. And so if your prompts are not properly defined, you're going to get hallucinations. So you heard about the lawyers that, use ChatGPT for case research that they could cite in court and made it up. Well, here's the thing. I talked to some of those lawyers, right? The thing is ChatGPT doesn't know you need real cases unless you tell it. Right? Their prompt was, give me 3 cases that I can cite, in court that support my case strategy, right? And so ChatGPT was great. I'll make up 3 cases that strongly support your case strategy, right? Perfect.
Yeah.
It doesn't know the cases have to be real. That's one of those, intuition, instinct type of things. But if you change your prompt and tell ChatGPT, please research and identify 2 or 3 real cases that I can cite in court that support my case strategy, you'll actually then go and do that.
So I think the key question you're saying here is this, you got to ask them, are you trained on this model? So I think that clarifies it. And secondly, proper prompt engineering, making sure you're asking the right question. Otherwise, okay, great, thank you.
No problem. So I see, Joyce, you got a thing here. So specific and usable methods of applying AI to small business. Yeah, huge company. Well, so there's actually a lot of tools. We talked kind of about APIs and some of these things, or ChatGPT. There's a lot of stuff geared towards SMBs. So Microsoft has programs, Google, Amazon, but there are also tools out there that are targeted towards industries. So there's stuff out there. It's trying to be made as accessible as possible, but you got to remember with AI, a lot of the pricing is based on usage. The more you use it, the more it'll cost. But there's volume pricing built in, but that's typically the model you'll often find, usage or subscription. And then I see Kurt is asking, are there examples where staff in accounting and finance department use an AI app privately and tap into ledger data? Most likely. There was a survey done by ZDNet about people using like ChatGPT at work, and 1 out of 4 people that are doing that don't tell their employer. So there's obviously privacy and data risks because of that. And the big reason why they don't tell their employer is suddenly they look like a superstar and they're getting merit increases, promotions, all these things. And they don't want to tell their employer because they're afraid if they do, the employer will either say you can't use it anymore, or I want you to train your peers to use it, and suddenly everybody's up to the same caliber. I know it's crazy, but that's people tend to be the biggest challenge in most things.